Dan Illman, Mike Beer kicking off the late pick four, a 50-cent late pick four at Belmont Park on Saturday with graded stakes action. This is the Grade 3 Intercontinental Stakes, 7 furlongs on the Widener turf for fillies and mares. Before we get to the analysis, I want to remind you, please try out those DRF mobile past performances. Experience classic PPs with mobile interactive access. Access those full cards in seconds. Get that exclusive lifetime buyer speed figure graph. Learn more, drf.com/MPPS. Here's the field for the Grade 3 Intercontinental, and we've got last year's winner of the Intercontinental in this field, Mike. On the far outside is the 12 Significant Form. I guess Significant Form heads sort of an armada of Chad Brown trained runners. Newspaper of Record, the number 5, one of the big names, hoping to get back on track. She's been a bit of a riches to rags story.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what she does here. They're going to stick with her. They decided this year to keep her going shorter, and maybe that will be what really turns her around. I'm really actually hoping that they get her back in form because she was so good as a 2-year-old, but she's got a lot to prove now.
Let's throw up the Timeform US pace projector for this race. And I agree with Timeform US. I think the 6 Jakarta, that's one way to go for a horse that's been running 5 furlongs at Gulfstream. Last time out, ran in a dirt race on the lead. She has got to go to the front. Victim of Love, I'm not sure if this horse's speed will translate to the turf. Perhaps this horse will be close to the pace. I think the pace will be fair, but not necessarily very fast.
That's what I thought too. I do expect Jakarta to do what she does and use her speed and make the lead. But I don't necessarily think she's going to have to blaze to get there.
Chad Brown is the number 1 Viadera coming in from overseas for Juddmonte Farms. This horse really didn't face the best competition overseas, a stakes winner, a listed stakes winner in Ireland, coming out of a handicap race where it did produce 3 next out winners, but she didn't really run very well. She also didn't break very well, and I think that's a major concern in a race like this. Sometimes these European horses don't break well at all, and I don't think Viadera is the kind of horse they can spot this field a couple of lengths at the start.
Yeah, I don't either. We'll see what happens. She wasn't a horse who, did a lot for me. I thought her form overseas was fine, but it wasn't great. Certainly she hasn't, found the toughest spot in the world here to make her stateside debut. So, I think she's a little interesting, Dan, but I don't know. I'm going to take somebody else on top.
It would behoove Jose Lezcano to use Victim of Love's speed and get her into the race and perhaps calm down in second behind Jakarta in case Jakarta finds the 7 a bit taxing. Victim of Love, though, is trying turf for the first time, and that's kind of a big ask against a quality field.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I don't really know what to say about her. She's going to be a very big price in this race, but she's not for me.
Eye in the Sky scored at the fairgrounds last time out, going 5.5 furlongs. I thought she got a great setup. The pace was fast. She rallied down. She finished a good, solid third in a race that's produced 2 next out winners, and one of them, Bell's the One, came back to win the Grade 3 winning colors. So I really couldn't find too much of an excuse for her in that race.
Yeah, me either. And I think that's more of her distance too, Dan. I mean, she's obviously a solid turf sprinter. But the one win in New York in the misdirection last year was when she just got absolutely loose on the lead, and that's not going to happen in here. And I really feel like the 7 furlongs is going to be a stretch for this horse.
Slimy, the number 4, is entered main track only, so we'll talk about one of the big names in this race. That's Newspaper of Record, who was just a brilliant 2-year-old, won her first 3 starts, including the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. She has not won since that race in 2018. She often gets very headstrong in her races. That has cost her. Last year, while it was a disappointing year, she ran into some really nice horses. Cambiar Park ended up winning a Grade 1, the QE2. Of course, you had Concrete Rose, who was arguably the best filly on the turf in the division before getting hurt. Newspaper of Record's been away for a long time. I kind of like her at this shorter distance, and it's worth noting earlier this winter, she's been working in company with Rushing Fall, who came back with a big performance earlier this week at Belmont.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just see what happens, Dan. The fact that Chad and Klarovich are pressing on with her, I guess you could take that as a good sign. And we'll just see what happens here as they start back now as a 4-year-old. She was not good last year. Clearly did not take a step forward from that unbelievably good 2-year-old campaign. I agree with them cutting her back in distance. And listen, they tried to rate her last time. It was a total disaster going 1.25 miles. If I'm Chad Brown, I'm telling IRAD to send her to the front here.
Now, if that's the case, she might have to deal with Jakarta, who has an aggressive rider in Kendrick Carmouche, who, and ever since being taken over by Michael Maker, has looked very, very good. A win on turf sprinting, a win going a one-turn mile in an off-the-turf race. Let's watch Jakarta's recent performance. And she's bred to be a sprinter. She's by Bustin' Stones. This was the race 2 starts back, 5 furlongs on the weeds, and she just got away to a very easy advantage on the turn, and she keeps right on going. The pace was not necessarily fast. You see her kicking on home. She's going to have to deal with better horses, and I'm not sure about the 7.
Yeah, me either. I mean, listen, she ran well in that race, but that's about as slow as you're going to be able to go in a 5 furlong turf sprint. I thought she really took advantage to win that race. I just feel like it has to be a totally different scenario here, Dan. It's Maker. Maybe he's gotten her really good. She wanted a mile last time. I want to see her do it against this field.
I think with all of the attention on Chad's newspaper of record and significant form, I think Regal Glory might be a horse you want to keep an eye on because this one has ability. She's lightly raced. I would expect a forward move in her first start as a 4-year-old. And her last race is just an utter throwout in the QE2 Cup, a race with no pace that was completely controlled by her stablemate Cambier Park. She tried hard in the stretch. She's just not going to overcome a 3/4 split of 114-2 in a quality horse like Cambier Park is controlling it. She needs to improve from a buyer standpoint, but I don't think that's impossible at all.
I don't either. You know what? You're right. She wasn't fast as a 3-year-old, but she was good. She did what she was supposed to do in a lot of those races. Obviously, very well managed, I thought, by Chad Brown. And the other thing that I really like about her, Dan, is late in her 2-year-old year when she finally got started, she began sprinting, and she ran really well in both of those races. This shorter distance could really work for her.
Get Mother of Rose cuts back to 7, and I think that's going to be okay for her. I know she won the Honey Fox 2 starts back at a mile, but she's always been a solid 6-7 furlong type. Last time out in the Sand Springs, she ran okay. She had a little bit of trouble. She was in against some decent horses. I mean, La Signare and Zofeli, they came back to run 2-3 in the Grade 3 Mint Julep with Stereo 91 Beyer speed figures at a price. If you give this horse a little bit of pace, she can come with a run.
I agree with that. I was somewhat surprised that she ran so well going longer down in Florida this winter. A really tough trip off the layoff in the South Beach. She came back and won the Honey Fox, a Grade 3. I really like her cutting back to 7 for this. Her races sprinting on turf at Belmont, they are all good, Dan.
The 9 Rose Flower still trying to get on firm turf. She's run 3 times in North America for Christophe Clement, has caught wet tracks all 3 times, 3rd last time out in the autumn days going 6. I think 7 furlongs is a lot better distance for her, and she has shown ability on firm turf overseas. She's a little bit of a sleeper. Yes, she's slow on paper, but she's got the right connections, and firm going might move her up a long way.
Yeah, she's interesting here. You know what? The more I look at this race after I sent my picks in, I wish I had her a little bit higher because I think she's a horse that you could use in here. This is a tough spot for her, but I like the 7 for her. I think if she gets the right trip, she's a contender in here. And in that autumn days last time, I know she was beaten by Saratoga Treasure, but this filly did not get a good trip in this race. In that race, she was buried in traffic all through the stretch and only got clear too late.
And if we'll watch that race in a little bit, the winner made a big wide move at just the right time. JC's Shooting Star, a really nice New York bred, probably a bit overmatched in this race. She was also in that autumn days. And again, there wasn't a lot of pace for her. She tried her best. She's in tough here.
Yeah, she really is. I'm a fan of hers. I do prefer her as a turf sprinter, but maybe more like 5.5 and 6, Dan. I'm not sure about the 7.
Where did Saratoga Treasure's last race come from? Let's watch it. It's the autumn days. Was it just simply the yielding ground and she just relished it? Because we're at the track this day and Saratoga Treasure, the pace wasn't fast. Eric Cancel made a very wise move, making this big 4-wide run on the turn to take command. But then she continues to sustain the rally and she's getting away from this field with a Beyer speed figure that she never earned before. A big 92. Was it the ground or did she figure this game out finally after start number 16?
Listen, I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that she was getting really good at the end of last year. She won 3 of her last 4 starts. She had a couple of tough trips in races prior to that, which suggested that she was getting good. And listen, if she could run that last race back, I suppose she could be a factor. Now, I just think this is a way tougher spot for her, Dan, but I'm not knocking her form. She was good at the end of last year.
Significant form was very good last year leading up to the grade 1 matriarch, and she's just not a grade 1 horse. She's a nice grade 2, grade 3 type going against the Got Stormies, Daddy is a Legends, Juliet Foxtrots. At that point in time isn't going to work out for her, but she fits with these kind of horses, and she came firing off the layoff to win the Intercontinental last year, and she also has tactical speed, enough speed that Johnny V can get her in a good spot despite the outside post.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that stuff. It just, it felt like the book on her as a 3-year-old was, 9 furlongs and beyond is too far for her. Shorter distances are better. She returned from a similar layoff last year, was about a week longer, and won this race, I thought, very impressively. And I'll be honest with you, Dan, I don't think this field is any tougher than the one she beat last time. I think she's the horse to beat in here.
And we take a look at our top selections for the Intercontinental, and that's where you're going. Significant form back to back and belly to belly in the Intercontinental. She's my second pick. I think she's way the horse to beat. I was just blown away by Saratoga Treasure's last race, and I agree with you. I just think she got really good at the end of last year. It'll be interesting to see how she could cope with tougher competition going the 7. Her best races have come at 6. But if you give her some pace, I think she's going to come with a run, and I know she's going to be a price. So I went 11, 12, 1, and 3. You went 12, 1, 5, and 10.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with significant form. I think she'll be the favorite in here. I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens if they fall for newspaper of record again. I'm sort of hoping they do that, but I'm just going to stick with significant form.
Grade 3 Intercontinental kicks off the 50-cent pick 4 at Belmont on Saturday. Race 8 has an approximate post time 5:04 Eastern. Best of luck.